Hello, good evening. It's late in the evening here, and we are at my Twitter account. And the one promise I can make right now is this video is going to be interrupted with my coughing at some point, sooner or later. But I'll try to keep this video short. You can take a look at my timeline. What do you think? Looks all right? Yeah, it looks all right. But this is not the reason why we're here. The reason we are here is in consideration of a news that has now developed to the point that conclusions are before us. And what is that news we're talking about? We're looking at this news. Well, let's begin it in context here. So this is a Twitter account called disclose.tv, and it brings out breaking news. So this evening they had this news about Norway. What it says is, just in, Norway scraps its final COVID restrictions despite surge in Omicron cases. No more masks, social distancing, or self-isolating requirements, Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store announced. And furthermore, they added more. Norway also ends requirements for vaccination certificates or testing when entering the country. Also, no more digital registration prior to arrival. Now, what do the people who are into conspiracy theories think about this? Why isn't Norway following the conspiracies? However, this was my consideration, and that is what I want to share with you in the video. And I want to make a record of this. So my response to them was, this, however, is not going to happen in Canada. The vaccine mandates are precisely for the reason that it has exposed a part of the population that is staunchly anti-government. Neither are they, the truckers, in it for health, nor the Canadian government. And I left two links in reply. Both links I'm going to open and I'll consider briefly with you. And I'll leave the links for these in the video description. So the first link is Ambassador Bridge, Canada court orders end to trucker blockade. Let's open this link. There's another link. This one. Excuse me. Well, just as I predicted, after 3 minutes, coughing for the first time, thanks to the Omicron variant. So this is it. This is sufficient reading for context. Canada's largest province declares emergency to help end truckers' protest. And this is from the Statesman. Now, because I clicked on the link from the BBC first, and in the margin, under top stories, there is another story that came out 15 minutes ago. Police begin clearing Canada bridge blockade. So I'm going to open that link as well. And what we're going to do is, this news came out 9 hours ago. So in just 9 hours, things have proceeded to the point of resolution. Excuse me. When this news came out, this was what it mentioned. The injunction came into effect at 1900 local time, midnight GMT on Friday, to end days of protests. Truckers are blockading Ambassador Bridge, a vital trade link between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. Truckers' protests against COVID restrictions are also ongoing at other border crossings and in Ottawa. The injunction was filed by the City of Windsor and the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, which argued that they were losing as much as 50 million Canadian dollars. And it's also given in US as 39 million and in British pounds 29 million per day because of the convoy. Wow. Hmm. Following the court order, Windsor police put out a statement to make demonstrators clearly aware that it is a criminal offense to block the border crossing. The police added that a criminal conviction could lead to the seizure of vehicles and the inability to enter the US. But hours later, crowds of people waving Canadian flags flouted the order and continued to occupy the bridge. Now, this was when the news came out, 9 hours ago. But let's read this also. Disco-like atmosphere as police gather. That's something that was kind of obvious from day one who these people are. This is by Robin Levinson King, BBC News, Windsor. Less than an hour before the injunction took effect on Friday, the protesters at the Ambassador Bridge had a vote. Do they obey the court order to vacate the roads? Or do they keep their trucks and automobiles in park and stand their ground? Excuse me. The vote, by a resounding cry of freedom, was clear. They're not going anywhere. That leaves the ball in law enforcement's court. As of 2100 local time, no arrests had been made and no fines issued. The blockade has cost millions of dollars in lost trade each day. And Canadian dollars 600 million since it began. That's the estimate. Wow. And here is a snapshot, which I saw earlier also. Ambassador Bridge, the stats, 323 million Canadian dollars worth of goods crossed daily. That's 238 in British pounds, because this is in the BBC. 10,000 commercial vehicles cross each weekday. 10,000. And $1.7 billion, the total value in trade between Canada and the US every day. And this is from the State Department Ambassador Bridge website. So how much did these truckers understand the implications of the blockade? And how much did those understand who organized these protests? That's the other consideration, because the Canadian government is going to definitely hold them accountable, and they know who they are. Also, they're keenly aware of those internationally who were instigating these protests, and they had taken a one-sided position of backing the truckers. So I'm not sure they elaborated on or enunciated clearly in practical manner what the rationale was for their taking the position with the truckers, and if they did, how correct they were in their rationale, or whether it was simply an anti-establishment, anti-government sentiment, and also backed by scientific understanding, or was it simply that they identify with this community of truckers and their level of scientific comprehension. Excuse me. So here is the update, which came out an hour ago. Now it says it's an hour ago. And this image is taken from the Reuters. I see the policeman is wearing his mask, keeping it under his nose, and I think that's actually a good thing to do. That's my opinion, because, like, I have a cough, and suppose I have to go outside, and this cough just comes on suddenly. And it's just my thinking. If I have to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask and keep it over my mouth. Of course, I could keep a handkerchief, but to prevent the droplets from traveling in the air, you would be surprised. One day I noticed, just a week ago, I was just standing in one room, and the light was on in the other room. And I was going to walk toward that room, and suddenly this cough came on, and I could barely resist it. And I coughed, and I saw the droplets from my mouth travel I would estimate at least 12 feet. I saw the droplets in the light and they landed on some furniture. When I'm off the habit, I quickly cover my mouth, but it just happened so quickly. Uh, and before I could get my hand to my mouth, this cough came on. And I've had this cough since the Omicron variant. This cough is like 3 weeks old, more than 3 weeks old now, almost going on a month. I've never had a cough this long. It's just a minor inconvenience to me, but for someone else, it could be. I will not want to be blamed for their ill health. Let's just put it this way. This I say despite the fact that I know from all the scientific literature that the Omicron variant, well, as we read about Norway, is more transmissible, but in terms of pathogenicity, it's less dangerous. But still, for someone else, it could be more serious than it is for me. So, back to the news. These kind of distractions making the recording longer than it needs to be. Excuse me. So, it says police have started to clear a blockade of the main crossing between Canada and the United States. After days of protests by truckers against COVID rules at the Ambassador Bridge in Ontario, officers urged them to heed an injunction against the demonstration. The vital trade route links Windsor, Ontario, with Detroit, Michigan. So that's why you see the automotive parts manufacturers. The self-styled Freedom Convoy movement was started by Canadian truckers opposed to a vaccinator quarantine order for drivers crossing the border. Friday's court order against the blockade was filed by the City of Windsor and the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, which argued it was losing as much as 50 million Canadian dollars, that is 39 million US dollars or 29 million British pounds per day because of the convoy. Following the injunction, Windsor Police put out a statement to make demonstrators clearly aware that it is a criminal offense to block the border crossing. The police added that a criminal conviction could lead to the seizure of vehicles and the inability to enter the U.S. But hours later, crowds of people waving Canadian flags flouted the order and continued to occupy the bridge. And a lot of it is the same information as was in the other article. So this again is the at the scene analysis by Robin Levinson King in Windsor, Ontario. In the cold light of Saturday morning, police came in to break up the blockade at the Ambassador Bridge. Arriving in city buses, they created a flank along the north side of the protest, which had blocked several lanes of traffic, preventing people and millions of dollars of trade from reaching the U.S., which is just on the other side of the border. Wearing balaclavas to protect them from the bitter wind, with some carrying heavy weapons, the officers made it known that the party protest, which had been going for almost a week, had come to an end. The protesters were not happy, but neither were they surprised that it was coming to an end. Some thanked the police and expressed their support for law enforcement, while one man cried, "You should be ashamed. They're going to have to love us out. We'll be peaceful and we'll lock arms and show unity," said Dan, a protester who declined to give his last name to the BBC. "If that's what they need to do, give me a ticket and I'll see you in court." Slowly, and with the help of an armored vehicle, police have been inching forward, encroaching on the blockade. Some have voluntarily driven away, others began to break down the mess hall tents. It will likely take a few hours to move the 100 or so vehicles, most of them pickups and SUVs, with a handful of heavy commercial lorries to disperse. Well, one thing I would say, the one good thing that has come out is that people online, Facebook or Twitter or wherever, they, by taking an unequivocal stand against the government and for the truckers, have demonstrated publicly and for a record who they really are. What is their level what are their beliefs, what motivates them, what their objectives are. That is quite clear now, and it will be remembered. Well, this is the final news from the Statesman, came out on Saturday, 12 February 2022. Excuse me. Canada's largest province declares emergency to help end truckers' protest. And of course, this would be before the update came out an hour ago. But this is what it said. Ontario Premier Doug Ford declared a state of emergency in the largest province of Canada to end what he called truckers' illegal occupation of the national capital, Ottawa, and their blockade of the country's border with the US. Ford said that he would urgently enact orders that will make crystal clear it is illegal and punishable to block and impede the movement of goods, people, and services along critical infrastructure, including international border crossings, major highways, airports, ports, bridges, and railways, reports Xinhua news agency. So that sounds like a Chinese news agency that is now situated in Canada. And so it's like any other news agency, pretty much an international coverage. You can read more. I'll just read here. The Canadian government does not intend to comply with such a request from the protesters, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said at a news conference in Ottawa on Friday, noting the protesters need to understand it's time to go home. He told reporters that police at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels will enforce the law. Everything is on the table because this unlawful activity has to end, and it will end, said the Prime Minister. Of course, I can't say too much more now as to exactly when or how this ends, because unfortunately, we are concerned about violence, so we're taking every precaution to keep people safe. Trudeau was asked whether he would call in the army to assist the Ottawa Police Service, which has yet to receive all of the 1,800 additional officers requested from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Ontario Provincial Police. So what he said, using military forces against civilian populations in Canada or in any other democracy is something to avoid having to do at all costs. And that is correct. You know, people were saying, well, he's weak. Some were saying, oh, he's like a tyrant. So they don't leave in the sphere of public opinions. Opposers of Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government take on both sides. So whether he plays to this side or that side, he's caught. But that is what a good leader does. He looks at a position, he looks at the proposition, he looks at the problem, and he concentrates on the solution. And there are layers to the solution. If there was a stronger leader who was bent on proving his power, the military would have moved in even sooner. And then what would have happened? So that's why government. Imagine these people taking over a city and themselves becoming the tyrants. The Freedom Convoy becoming the tyrants who occupy the city and do as they wish. What would happen to the city? What would happen to the trade? Do you expect these people to do something constructive in the long term? Definitely not. This movement deteriorated on day one when it started. And those people who were adamantly behind them, their names will not be forgotten. Whatever their reason, their names will not be forgotten. So at this point, I'm going to end the video. It's just going over 19 minutes. It hasn't reached 20 minutes yet, but it's about as long as I want it to be. And this is it then. Thank you very much for your attention, for your time. I'm going to stop the recording. Good night and goodbye.